Right, time to put the bushes back on again. Don't forget the retaining ring for the felt seals if you got the old type of seals in there. I'll put a little bit of Loctite on the bush so they're nice and tight now. Don't put any Loctite on the hydraulic stop nuts. They seem to be so tight when you try to get these things off in the future, so they're quite fine without it. So don't put any Loctite on them. Just check that. Oh, put a little bit of grease on the threads. It helps seal it, especially if you've got a steel oil seal holders for in the future, so they come off a little bit easier because they seize on here. The grease will keep the water out. Well, they're not new, but they are a vast improvement over the old legs. Oh. That's that. Right, I just fitted the leg in the forks. It's exactly as I expected. So the damper rods, this is the original one, sits flush, or you call it flush, with the top of the nut. And the nut is about 1/4 of an inch high, the hex. So it's doing exactly what I thought it was doing, or was going to do. All right, there we go. Let's try to get this in focus like that. So the thread would sit there, just with the nut installed, and he's not at the stop yet. There we go. That's the bottom of the travel of the pressure tube. So indeed, That's where he sits in situ with the nut on, and he can go down a tiny little bit more. So the valve in the pressure tube is hitting the end of the tube first before the hydraulic stops the leg from going any further, and that's why. So it's there. That should be the bottom of the forks, but it isn't. Like, it goes a little bit deeper down, so that's the problem. On the other hand, when the forks are all the way up on the end of the travel, there, there's enough room for the damper tube, so we can space out the damper tube by 1/4 of an inch. We still won't hit the end of the travel, and that'll cure it. So I did it with this one. I screwed the nut on back to front, but it's 1/4 of an inch that the rod sticks through. So now, when at full travel, see, I still got a bit of play in the damper rod. So the damper valve is not hitting the end of the tube. So that is the solution, and I put a 1/4 inch spacer on the damper tube just to limit the travel by 1/4 of an inch. And so now he's not pulling on the damper rod whilst he's on, when you get your famous clunk on the end of the travel. Normally he wouldn't go that far down, but I use sidecar springs because it's a sidecar bike. When I ride them solo, it will get there. So yeah, so that is the solution. 1/4 of an inch space amount. There is plenty of room for the damper rod to go further down, so now the damper valve is in between the tube and it does not hit the end at either end. That's what you're trying to achieve. So yeah, watch out for that when you're building forks. Okay, this was the little test piece, a little distance piece, 1/4 of an inch to sort out the travel issue with the damper assembly. It fits on here and it limits the travel of the forks by 1/4 of an inch, and that's sort of the problem, mate. But that was just a test piece. So these are the proper ones, and if my calculations are right, I won't go on yet, we shrink them on. So let's do that now. These are about 1/1000 smaller in diameter as the stem. Let's see how it works. That's one. Let's hope it sticks. Okay, success. We shrunk these on, they don't fall off, and if I ever find out what the issue is a mishmash of parts or not, it is reversible, so we can take it back off again. Yeah, anyway, it works for now, so now we can assemble the tubes again. So the issue was, of this tiny little head was gonna hit the end of the damper tube, right, well, the other way around. So now this little thing travels in the middle of the tube without hitting that end and without hitting that end. The travel of the forks is controlled between here and here before this thing hits the end. That was the whole exercise, making sure that it's not hitting there and it's not hitting there, and the travel's controlled here, and there is a little bit still to go on these. That was it. All right, let's put it together. Finally, had these apart so many times. It's worth opening these up and checking that your little valve ain't broken. One. I'll pause you for a second. I'll put them in the lathe and give them a final nip. They're really hard to hold otherwise. Now, testing the damper action accordingly to the book how they used to do it. They did it in the factory as well. If you on YouTube, if you watch the black and white Triumph original factory film, you see them do it in there. So you stand in a bit of oil. It's got to pump up. There we go. So on the downstroke, it wants to be difficult, easy, back down again. Perfect. And then test the other one. I already did it, so both of them feel the same, and then be great. When they're slightly worn, I just use engine oil for damping fluid. I always have done. Perfect. Well, that concludes that test. Let's put them back together again now. Right, now I can make a nice mess. So the bottom holes here, that is just to let the oil into the damper tube. I didn't think it did anything. Let's have a look. Let's do this again. Oh, yeah, it's filled up. Yeah, see, the level here does not change. It just moves the disc inside the tube through the oil. It doesn't actually pump it whilst it's full. So tiny bit maybe. Yeah. So yeah, these holes they're just to fill the tube up. There we go. Let that dribble out for a minute. Okay. Oh, put the springs back on again. That's my slight modification. It makes it a bit easier. Kind of cheat a bit. push me through. Oh. Okay, that's good. Right, so the original style top nuts, you have to push the spring down, hold them with a pair of pliers, and just wind them to the end of the thread. But then if you want to change your springs, or you want to get it off, when it's in the forks, you have to push the spring down, and because the water can get in here. It doesn't hurt putting a tiny bit of Permatex on the thread. Actually, I'll do that with mine actually. Because over the years they get quite stuck, and the only thing you got to grip them is just the rod. So my little modification with the double nut, and it only adds a tiny bit on the preload. My first nut, it doesn't bottom out on the thread, it's just a lock nut. So afterwards it's much easier to get it undone again. So I actually will put, so these go inside of here, so they only add that much. I'll just put a bit of sealant on it now. Old Permatex. There we go. That'll stop the water from getting in it, in the thread, and because they get stuck. Right. One. He's ready. The other nut is still holding the yolks together, so we'll do this one in a minute. Right, we're ready to put them back in again now. I'll put them in. The bottom bolts, put a little bit of Permatex on these as well. It helps seal it. And then just stick them in. So we got our new machine slot here. Same as the later forks. So you've got to look for the little locating pin. And lift the leg up and turn it. There we go. He's in the pin. Do it again. But it drops in. See, there. That's him. And hold the leg up, because if you drop the leg, it comes out of mesh again, and you might be on top of the pin when you tighten the bolt up and snap your little pin. So hold that up. There we go. He's in. There. He's in the slot. Yeah, and hold the leg up whilst you get the bolt in. Until it makes contact. And there's an aluminium washer in the bottom. It's already in there. You don't use a fibre washer. It needs to be an aluminium one, so it's like a hard contact with the bolt. You don't want it to come undone. Right. So that's that. If you've done your fork alignment before, you're not saying you can take one nut out, do one damper, it won't move, and then do the other one. It feels right. See, with the sidecar springs, it does hit the stop. With the weight of the bike on, you'll come in a bit, but yeah. It's that clunk. Before we altered the damper rod, that clunk will be on that tiny little valve and it'll break it. So that's why we have to watch out for that. So that's done. Let's do the other one.